Okay, we're going to go over this article here. I know it's been almost a week since it came out, but it's about the Pine Barrens and about the southern pine beetle. And as you know, part of the reason, and a big part of the reason I'm cheering on the cold weather, and we need more of it. It actually, as cold as it's been, it really haven't broken any records. It actually needs to get colder than it's been. But we need a good stretch where I have highs in the teens and 20s, no 30s, for at least a week or two, and that would really help knock down the beetles. I mean, it's helping, but I don't know if the cold we're getting is enough to really knock the population down. It really needs to be more severe than it has been. But anyway, at least it is cold, but unfortunately it's going to get milder next week again. It needs to stay below freezing for a long period to really get these beetles under control. But anyway, let's read the article here. It says Suffolk's beetle-ravaged pine barrens at a heightened wildfire risk. There's also a video in this. We're not going to play that, but you can see just how devastated that area is. It looks like a war zone. And this is at Napiog State Park. So obviously we know Napiog State Park was hit very hard. So thousands of acres have been killed by the southern pine beetle in the 10 years since they arrived in Suffolk County, foresters say, heightening the risk of wildfires by generating heavy fuel loads that can drive bigger and hotter fires. So all the dead trees can actually add to the wildfire risk. There's been a progression toward more severe fires, says Captain Timothy Barrens, a forest ranger with the State Department of Environmental Conservation based in Stony Brook, largely due to the infestation of the pine beetle, which because New Jersey did a better job managing their forests. They are not getting hit nearly as hard as we are, and their fire risk is probably lower than ours is, because again, they've been doing controlled burns for a much longer time than we have. Getting back to the article, it says the beetles have ravaged forests from the Rocky Point Preserve to Southaven County Park in Yaphank, and as far east as Napiog State Park in East Hampton. Infestations have also reached Fire Island. I mean, there's no part of the Pine Barrens that hasn't been affected by these beetles on Long Island. You can still go to New Jersey, but and you don't have to deal with it. But here on Long Island, it's really hard to find spots that haven't been affected. Their favorite target is the pitch pine, the most common species in the Pine Barrens. 100,000 acres of ecologically sensitive private and public lands in eastern Brookhaven, southern Riverhead, and western Southampton. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, of trees have been lost in the far east end, said David Lee Lice, an East Hampton Town Council member. It's very devastating. So, what Newsday found, the southern pine beetles have killed thousands of acres of trees on Long Island in the Pine Barrens. The altered landscapes that are higher risk of uncontrolled wildfires, and climate change has increased the number of fire weather days when hot, dry conditions enable fires to spread. And again, the southern pine beetle is not supposed to be here. If we had cold winters like we're supposed to have, we wouldn't be dealing with southern pine beetle. But because we've had all these mild winters because of climate change, even this winter, it's been cold, but this winter's still not as cold as I remember the winters the way they were supposed to be. We still had too many warm days and not enough snowfall, and the Great Lakes are still not frozen. I mean, when I was growing up, the Great Lakes were frozen by January completely. You didn't have any lake effect snow. Anyway, getting back to the article, the towering stands of dead pines don't by themselves increase wildfire risk, according to Kathy Schwager, Natural Resource and Fire Program Manager at Brookhaven National Laboratory in Upton, which is surrounded by 5,000 acres of pine forest. You open up the canopy, and all of a sudden you have this flush of growth, plants growing lower to the ground in the forest understory. What creates really intense fire conditions is the small diameter fuel, Schwager said. That's what makes the fire go. So talking about L.A. here, the L.A. calamity. As wildfires that consumed whole neighborhoods in Los Angeles continue to burn, experts have labored to explain how the calamity unfolded. One significant factor, according to climate scientists, was an oversupply of combustible fuel in and around the city. 2 wet winters generated a burst of growth, then months of drought turned it into tinder. The eastern seaboard has never been as vulnerable to wildfire as the arid regions of the southwest and the west coast, and it lacks factors like the swift Santa Ana winds that have blown embers to ignite new fires in the mountains surrounding Los Angeles. But Long Island, like LA, has been hotter and alternatively wetter and drier than the patterns that were once normal, and this region shares the risk factor of the buildup of combustible fuel in forests. The unwelcome contribution of Long Island of on Long Island of the tiny insect, and you can see here a picture of the devastation. Again, a few pitch pines have survived here, but most have not. And this is again in Napiog State Park. That's where the picture is from. The beetles themselves are a signal of climate change. They are native to the southeastern United States, but as winters warm, they have slowly spread north. They were first spotted on Long Island in 2014 in the Wertheim National Wildlife Refuge in Shirley. Anne Marie Chapman, the refuge's visitor services manager, said during a walk in the woods in November, the insects may have been blown in from New Jersey during Superstorm Sandy, Chapman said. Infestations have now spread as far as Cape Cod. So it's very interesting that, again, they probably did come from New Jersey first, but New Jersey was able to get theirs under control because of better forest management, because of controlled burns and a healthier forest as a result. And we don't have controlled burns. Forests are overgrown. The pines are less healthy and more vulnerable to these outbreaks here on Long Island. Anyway, get back to the article. The beetles are tiny, just 1/8 of an inch long, but destructive. The adults crawl into the tiny crevices in the bark of a pine tree and tunnel into the cadmium, the layer just beneath the outer bark, preventing nutrients from traveling along the trunk. Females place a pheromone call to other beetles nearby, inviting them to the choice tree. Then they lay eggs under the bark and overwhelming the host with thousands more invaders. So here's a picture of the pitch tubes that you see on infested trees. Pines try to defend themselves by flooding the tunnels with sap and expelling the insects, but trees that are stressed are more susceptible, and even healthy trees will succumb to a full-blown infestation, usually dying in a matter of months. Pine barrens, overcrowded understory. The pine barrens are well adapted to wildfire. Pitch pines are armored with thick bark that protects them from scorch, and their cones open up to disperse their seeds when exposed to high heat. Native shrubs such as laurel and huckleberry spread through tough underground rhizomes so they can sprout again even if the plant is charred. Naturally occurring low-intensity fires help keep the ecosystem healthy, thinning trees and shrubs and leaving those that remain to flourish. But for many years, those occasional flare-ups were suppressed, and the pine barrens became choked with trees and shrubs. Again, this is exactly what I just said earlier. We don't have, unlike New Jersey, we don't have a proper controlled burn strategy, and the forest became unhealthy because of the lack of fire, because, again, as I've said probably a million times on here, the pine barrens actually need fire to survive, and keeping fire out of the pine barrens kills the pine barrens, and that's exactly what's happened here on Long Island. Here's an aerial view of the Napiog State Park. And you can see all this whole area here, all that red, that's all where the infestation is. And you can see, there's some more spreading over there. And over here is Lazy Point, which so far hasn't been touched. I've got to get over there before that area disappears. The forests are too dense and the trees are unhealthy, Schwager said. In the pine barrens, sandy, nutrient-poor soils, crowded trees become stressed, which makes them more vulnerable to disease and pests. When the beetles arrived, they found the perfect conditions. So many people work to protect the pine barrens, and along comes an insect the size of a grain of rice to wipe it all out. Very accurate quote. Failed preemptive strike. Today, Napiog State Park. I think it's Napiog. I say Napiog, but I think it's actually supposed to say Napiog, I think. Today, Napiog State Park on the South Fork is among the worst hit areas on the island. The State Parks Department conducted suppression cuts when the beetles were first detected there, a kind of preemptive strike, said Tim Watson, director of the Montauk Complex of State Parks. Yeah, but they still acted too late. By the time they started doing anything, it was already too late. They were too slow. That effort failed to stop the spread, Watson said. Aerial photos of the park show sweeping stands of pines whose needles have turned rusty brown and gray. Hotter, drier weather increased the chances that the understory, and in extreme drought, the standing dead trees as well will ignite. Last year was the hottest on record in New York, as well as in the United States and across the globe, according to the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. By the way, the Trump wants to get rid of, by the way. So, again, Trump is a tyrant. We'll talk about him in other videos. Trust me, I'm going to have plenty of videos that, I'll just say it this way, Trump needs to be driven out of office. I don't care if he won the election at this point. I don't even care. He needs to be driven out. But that'll be a whole nother video. So it says here, bundles of wood cut from dead pitch pine trees that were attacked by the southern pine beetle inside Napeague State Park. Again, look at all that destruction right there. Again, we have people that deny what's going on. Hey, save it for another video, John. Save it for another video. The coastal New York region experienced 10 more fire weather days that are hot, dry, and windy in 2023 than in 1973, according to an analysis by the nonprofit Climate Central. That's among the biggest increases in fire weather that we've seen on the East Coast in the last 50 years or so. Long Island's riskiest season for wildfires is springtime, when the humidity is low and swift winds blow, igniting the understory as it goes. The particular geography of the narrow South Fork would make a large spreading wildfire in Napeague particularly hazardous to human life. There's only one road in and one road out, and that road runs right through Napeague and its neighbor Hither Hills State Park. If Napeague burns, Montauk would be an island without an escape route. State foresters are working on a multi-year strategy to manage the extra fuel load. In the meantime, Brookhaven National Lab cut down and burned dead trees to restore part of the damaged forest. So at least they're doing something in BNL about this, and they're doing fire as part of that. So we have widely spaced trees and lots of wildflowers coming in and grasses and tons of pollinators. The beetles are still chewing through the pitch pines, and climate experts expect 2025 could set another record for heat. But Schwager said the lab's woodland revival efforts offer a chance to consider, what do we want to see and how do we get there? So, and again, that's what they need to do. They need to cut down all the infestations, and they need to have fires. They need to have controlled burns. It's a start to restoring the health of the pine barrens, because, again, there is climate change, but, again, New Jersey's gone through climate change, and even New Jersey's warmed faster than we have, and their pine barrens are much healthier, and that is due to proper forest management, and that's what we need to do here. So that's going to wrap up this video here, and you can see just the devastation. It's a lot of bad news and some hope, but mostly bad news for Long Island, and honestly, I worry because it's just so far gone right now. That's why you got to enjoy the pine barrens here while I still can, because the Beetles might wipe them out, and I may be driven out of Long Island as the plan continues to move forward. So that's it. Good night.